Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, thank you. We are going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank you for coming out this early morning. I know some of you traveled a little bit further to get here, so we appreciate that. My name is Shani Alford. I'm a project manager with the Local Government Commission. We are a nonprofit organization based in Sacramento, but we work throughout California with local governments, agencies, and community-based organizations to provide technical assistance and educational opportunities on a wide range of issues, including what we're going to be talking about today. And I would like to introduce what I like to call my partner in crime on this project, who it's been a pleasure to work with over the past 3-4 months on this project. So I'm going to turn it over now to Elizabeth.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am, as Shani said, I'm Elizabeth Lanham. I'm the program manager for the California Urban Forest Council. So California Urban Forest Council, if you haven't heard of us, we're a program that works with governments, nonprofits, and we work throughout the state of California trying to bring technical assistance and just whatever assistance we can provide in urban forestry programs to help programs flourish and thrive. And so I won't get too much into the Civic Spark program specifically because we are going to have Jesse, one of our Civic Spark members, tell you about the program and what sort of assistance we're available to offer for this. But I don't know, I guess that's about all I have to say, so why don't we keep it short and I can turn it over to our keynote speaker, Dr. Geoffrey Donovan, who we're so lucky to have with us here today. He is a researcher with the U.S. Forest Service, and he has done several studies researching the effects of urban forestry on crime reduction, public health, and just all the economic benefits of having urban trees. And we get to hear a little bit about some of his research here today. So.
Well, I guess I'm going to come with a message that's pretty popular, is to tell you that all of your jobs are more important than you think they are, which is just normally a fairly positive message. Well, why do I say that? It's because of whoever you are. If you trim trees, if you work in city administration, if you work for a non-profit, the value of your job depends upon the value of trees, right? That's inherent in that. The values they provide. The more valuable the trees, the more valuable you are, the jobs you do. And so what I'm going to do this morning is talk about some of those values. And there's something you might not be aware of, so that not only hopefully you get convinced that your job is more valuable, but more importantly you can convince other people of the value of your job, of the value of trees, because there's always going to be a point in anybody's professional life where you need to justify what you do. And so hopefully I'm going to provide some information that will help you do that. So what, again, I'm an economist, so I'm a soulless guy. I'm all about numbers. You're not going to hear any moral arguments from me this morning. It's going to be a quantitative thing. So, if you want to, I'm also English, so, the combination of that makes me essentially a sociopath. No, I'm not. So if you're looking for talk of feelings, I might leave right now. So, it's always useful to be able to demonstrate returns on the financial investments in forestry, or anything for that matter. Anything we spend money on, clearly, it's good to show what we get for that. But there's this old adage in natural resource economics: if you can't count it, it doesn't count. Right? So that's the thing. So a lot of the benefits of urban trees are a little difficult to count. We might sort of have an intuitive understanding, but the bean counter types want us to be able to count them. Right? And that's what I'm going to try and do today, is to help you guys be able to do some of that a little better. And in the drought in California has made this even more important, obviously. because now trees are not just competing for financial resources, but they're competing for water resources too. So it becomes, when you've got high priority, you know, in a time of drought, high priority uses of water, or what is seen as high priority, so drinking water and agriculture, they're going to get the priority. Urban trees may get tossed out of lifetime. And that, I think, would be an enormous mistake, a serious mistake. And not from a moral point of view, but from a self-interested point of view. We will be doing ourselves harm by doing that. They're not just, trees aren't just pretty, they provide essential services. So what I'm going to concentrate today is on one group of those services, which is public health. And what I'm going to say, hopefully, is that my research shows that quite literally trees can be a matter of life and death. That's it. I mean, I'm not saying this is a metaphor, but the presence of trees can be the difference between people being alive and dead. Now, that kind of puts them, I would hope, up as being somewhat important. So that we can put trees back up where they deserve to be, which is as essential infrastructure. Indeed, what I'm going to finish with is I'm going to try and show you both that trees are a matter of life and death, and that we should maybe consider them an essential part of our public health infrastructure. Not just things that make our neighborhoods a little prettier. They're nice to have if we can have them, but when push comes to shove, they're going to go out the door. So I'm going to try and spend the rest of my talk backing up that somewhat bold claim. It's all very bold to make claims like that, but I'll try and actually provide some numbers to back them up. And if I am right, trees do save lives, then they may be a sound use of both money and water. So that's what I'm going to try and do. But before I talk about some specific studies, what I'm going to try and do is spend a little time complaining about my job, because I've got people here that you can't get up without being too rude. So you've got to listen to me. I like whining. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. It's one of my many character flaws. So to illustrate how difficult my job is, and we're interested in, so now we're interested in the public health benefits. How does the medical field, let's say, demonstrate how a drug works? If you're going to got a new drug, how would you go about demonstrating how that works? How are the health benefits? What you do is called a randomized controlled trial. This is what they do. What does that involve? Well, you simply recruit a group of people, typically, let's say, those suffering from a type of disease. For example, you randomly split them into two groups. You give half a drug, you give half a placebo, you see whether the people with the drugs do better. Then you monitor both groups and see what happens. Now look, half-bright monkey in a white coat could do this. This is straightforward. This is easy. I say this entirely out of professional jealousy. I wish I was able to do these things, but it's really not that difficult, is it? Recruit the people, split them in half, hand out pills. This is easy stuff. Now, I'll give you a simple example. Let's imagine here, we've got this tragic disease here that turns people purple. Right, so imagine that, we've got these purple people. And so we recruit a sample. In this case, we're just going to, there'll obviously be more than one person in the treatment group and the control group, but we're just going to keep it simple, one each. So these tragic purple people here, you recruit them, and we have a new drug, and we think it's called Purple Away. So there we see, we're going to give that to one group, and we're going to have a placebo, and we see what happens. So what do? Oh well, this guy gets better, fantastic, so this drug works. So what we can say is that this drug has caused this person to get better, because this is an experiment. We've done something to the world. In this case, we've given somebody a drug. And so this is how the medical people do it. Well, if that's how they do it, let's see how we can do that with trees. Let's see trees. If trees are good for us, maybe they'll help in this case. So let's set this up again. We've got our tragic purple people there. It's funny, it's tragic. It's easy. You're laughing at them. It's terrible, bad people. So we plant a tree now. But straight away you can see kind of the problem, because the drug works straight away, but you're not likely to get the benefits from the tiny seedling. So that's a bit of a problem. No matter, we'll just wait for the tree to grow for a bit. So you wait, the tree grows a little bit, and you're still waiting, and my boss calls me up and asks me why I haven't published a paper in 10 years, and I say, this is going to be a really great one, you just got to hang on there. And still nothing's happening, tree's still a little small. So you wait a little longer, and still nothing's happening, and my boss again really impatient, calls me up, says, what's happening? And I said, look, any day now, And unfortunately, at this point is when the person in the treatment group there decides to retire and move to Phoenix. And so I'm stuck. The whole experiment falls apart, and more importantly, I get fired. And so, admittedly, that's a little self-centered of me, but as I'm a scientist, that's pretty much a given. So it's not, I can't really criticize me for that. Now, I could have held that person at gunpoint, and said, you can't move. And actually, there is some, and I work for the Forest Service, and this has been done in the Forest Service. I don't know if you know, in 1910, Ed Pulaski held people at a mine shaft in Idaho, stopped his fire crew running away, and he was a hero, and named a firefighting tool after him. I somehow think there may have been a cultural shift, and if I started holding people at gunpoint, that I might not be hailed as a hero in quite the same way. You may be willing to give it a try, but it's not going to work. So it's just not practical to do this sort of randomized control trial with a... well, you could do it, but it would require an awful lot of time and money, both of which I'd happily be, don't have that. So what are we going to do? Well, we have to rely on the dark arts of observational research, which is where I go in. And what we do is we don't do an experiment in this case. We don't change the world in any way. We don't give drugs, we don't plant trees. What we do is, at its heart, very simple. We just try and look at places with more trees and see whether people are healthier there. Well, that's straightforward enough. I mean, how difficult can that be? So let's look at a little example there, right? So imagine we've got two people. One has a tree outside the house and one doesn't. And we wait, we watch to see what happens, and this poor guy dies. People think this is not funny. Terrible, terrible people, of course, which means my people. So, of course, it means that the lack of tree was caused that guy to die, right? Well, no, it's ridiculous, right? Because these people are different in other ways. So, how do we know it's a lack of tree? How do we know the guy's older, for one thing? I mean, this is ridiculous. So how do we isolate the effect of the tree, or the absence of the tree? Well, ideally, we compare two people who are identical, but we don't get to our people identical. They're really hard to find. And in fact, we never can, because people are different in ways we can't observe. So that we can never find identical people. So, we can't breed them like sort of clone lab rats or something. I mean, I would, but that's because I have no ethics. I'm an economist, but again, I can't do that. So, what do we do? Well, what we do is we use statistical techniques. And what we do is what we call control for the differences. So let's start a difference. So we know, for example, that race is an important driver of public health outcomes. So what we can do is we can control for race. That's if, and what I say by that means it's as if we're comparing two people as if the race is the same. We're basically taking race out of the comparison. So we can do that there. But that's not the only difference, right? Okay, well, let's control for age. Still, it's not the only difference. Let's do income, and then let's do gender. Right, so we've got these, now it's as if they're the same. So when I say that, they aren't actually the same, but we've used these statistical techniques to hold those things constant, to just take them out of the equation. Now this person dies. Well, we don't know for sure that the tree caused it, because this is just we haven't done an experiment, but we're sure that it is because of differences in education, race, gender, income, things like this. Okay, so that's the type of work I do. So now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to move away from the cartoons. It's not really what I would prefer to stay doing that and actually look at some specific results. And the first one I did is I looked at the relationship between trees and birth outcomes in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. Now, why on earth would I look at how trees could affect birth outcomes? That's a bizarre choice. Well, one of them is pragmatic. When there's a statutory requirement to report births, so we have data on over 99% of births in this country, so we know that. And we have a lot of information on birth certificates. There's a lot about the baby, but a lot about parents. We have a lot about the education, the race, and things of parents. So the type of things we need to take into account. And this is really important. When you do the type of work I do, what you can't do, or what you shouldn't do, is what's called data mining. That is, you collect some numbers, you run some analysis, you find some correlations, and then you try and explain them. And then you come up with weird, spurious nonsense, like, oh, being born on a Tuesday makes you more likely to be left-handed, or just some ridiculous nonsense like that. So you can't, it's not data first and then story. Well, it has to be story first and then data. So is there a plausible story linking trees and birth outcomes? Well, yeah, there is actually. We know that if we put people in the natural environment, it can reduce stress. It can reduce blood pressure, it can reduce heart rate, it can reduce the salivary cortisol, which is a stress hormone. We also know that trees can improve air quality. And we know that air quality and stress are big drivers of birth outcomes. So there is a plausible story going in, right? So we've got that story going in. We're not just, this isn't just total fantasy. And this next point is really important, although somebody's going to hit me. I'm going to say it one time. I say this as a man who's never had kids. Pregnancy only lasts 9 months. And why is that important? Well, because we knew the address in this study where a woman lived when she gave birth. What does that tell us about her exposure to trees over her whole pregnancy? Do we know, did every woman stay at her house for 9 months? No. But I would argue that most or all of the women would have spent most of all the time at that address. 9 months just ain't that long. Now imagine if we were looking at heart attacks, for example, and we knew where somebody lived when they had been coming to the hospital, been admitted to the hospital for a heart attack. What would that address tell us about somebody's exposure to trees over the course of a disease that might go back 50 years? Not much, because people have a tendency to move. So pregnancy is great. We know what causes it, we know what it ends. It's, as a disease, if you will, a great thing to study. So what I looked at in this case was nearly 6,000 singleton births, so just not twins and triplets. And I looked at 2 adverse birth outcomes. The first is called small for gestational age, which is if the baby was under the 10th percentile based on gestational age and gender. What that mouthful means is they're underweight. So we've got underweight babies, and then also preterm babies, if a baby was born before 37 weeks gestational age. So I looked at those, and I controlled for it. I took into account demographics, like I showed you there, of the parents. So I took into account race, education, income. But that's not the only thing that can affect birth outcomes. If a mother has had previous uncomplicated births, she's more likely to have one in the future. So we took that into account, previous births. Also the type of prenatal care somebody received, the type of insurance they had, public, private, they have no insurance. Distance to stuff, so good stuff like parks, like public transportation, bad stuff like freeways. We went down to characteristics of a house, the heating and cooling system. Maybe if a house is air conditioned, there's less stress on a mother in the summer. So that was actually looking, my sister-in-law gave birth in early October, and I remember seeing her in August, and she didn't look like she was enjoying life at all. So that was actually, and what made me think of that. And then also crime. So we know crime can be stressor. So then only after looking at all that, we looked at tree cover in 50, 100, and 200 meter buffers. Around this, oh, this is wrong, don't get rid of that one. That's little cartoons we missed out on that. Around the center of each house's lot. So can you see, even with these lights, can you see the aerial photograph on the left? You see there's little green rectangles? Is that, you can still see that? That's just the house's lot. And these aren't women in the actual sample for privacy reasons. And then the little red dot is the center of the lot. And on the right, this is just what we call classified aerial imagery. So we just create a digital layer. So the green is tree canopy, and that sort of nondescript other color is non-tree canopy. And for clarity, I put in 50, but just put in 50 meter buffers there. So what did we find? Well, after controlling for all that stuff I talked about, women with more tree canopy within 50 meters of their homes were less likely to have underweight babies. There was no effect on the probability of preterm birth. So this is kind of interesting. More trees, less likely to have an underweight baby. Now you might think to yourself, if you're skeptical, and I applaud that, so skepticism is good. You might think, well, this is some statistical oddity, or I screwed something up. Actually, both pretty reasonable explanations. But this paper came out in 2011, and weirdly there's been several since. And so in 2012, a paper in Spain found that women with more greenness, and they measured this with satellite imagery, had, within 100 meters of their homes, had higher birth weights. Oh, So that was consistent with what I had found. 2013, team in Southern California, women with more greenness within 50 meters of their homes had higher birth weights. And this held even after controlling for differences in air quality. Yeah, consistent results. 2014, team in Germany found that mothers with more greenness within 500 meters of their homes had higher birth weights, and this held even after accounting for differences in air pollution and noise. Huh. 2014, team in Canada found that mothers with more greenness within 100 meters of their homes had higher birth weights, and that held even after accounting for air pollution, noise, neighbourhood walkability, proximity park, and a partridge in a pear tree, everything. So, there's actually been even 3 other studies, one in Israel, a couple of other countries. So, but I think you can hopefully get the point. One study could be statistical oddity, 7 and a little less likely to be so. Now, there's some real environmental justice issues here as well, because I'm sure all of you know where are the areas in towns with fewer trees. There are the areas that face other health disparities, that have other economic disadvantages. And if we're seeing that the lack of trees can also have health impacts, negative health impacts, then again, this should be something that should make us a little uncomfortable. At least they make me uncomfortable. And also, we're getting to something fundamental here. Now imagine, if you had a healthy weight baby, somebody's foolish enough to give me 2 babies, but imagine that they did. A healthy weight baby in this hand, and an underweight baby in this hand. The difference between the two might be a mother's exposure to trees. This is something pretty fundamental. I mean, we're talking about something fundamental about our relationship with trees, if that is truly the case. Because birth outcomes are really important. If you're born underweight or premature, you're much more likely to die or have serious health outcomes at birth. Also, it can put you on a health trajectory for life. You can have health problems your entire life based on that. So these are things to avoid. Also, treating premature and underweight babies is staggeringly expensive. Neonatal intensive care units are just breathtakingly expensive. I had some dry numbers I used to say here. And then earlier in the year I was in Tampa, and I was talking to somebody who gave this talk, and I gave my numbers. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, 7 years ago, my son was born premature. He was born 1 pound 1 ounce, and he was given 0 chance of survival. And he spent 8 months, this is in fact, and he was very keen for me to tell the story, so he gave me this picture. This is Jack, born at 1 pound 1 ounce. So, a little guy there. It's a pretty difficult picture to look at. And he spent 4 months in the neonatal intensive care unit. It cost $8 million to treat him. No. I'm not suggesting, and by the way, perfectly healthy now. Doing fine. Although the other weird thing is he's playing ice hockey and he lives in Tampa, so there might be something gone wrong there a little bit. But other than that slight oddity, apparently he's doing quite well. And I'm not suggesting that trees would stop this particularly. I'm absolutely not saying that. But $8 million, for reference, Portland, Oregon, very large city, our annual urban forestry budget is about $3 million. So that's more than double. So you don't have to start avoiding too many of these to start paying for things. Also, these sort of experiences, even if it's, Jack survived, I was talking to his dad, he was great, it's obviously a horribly traumatizing experience. There was a study done a few years ago, and they looked at people who'd been visiting somebody in an adult intensive care unit. Now this was an adult one, so one can only imagine it would be worse in a neonatal one. And if you visit somebody for 5 days in a row, they then took brain scans of people who had visited, and they could see signs of trauma in the brain for up to 6 months. It was so traumatizing. So if trees can indeed even have a little impact and avoid a few of these things, you can make kids healthier, you can reduce healthcare costs, and you can avoid some truly horrifyingly traumatizing experiences for both the baby and the parents. Now, despite the consistent results I showed you there for my studies and the other ones, they all suffer from the nice tree, nice neighborhood effect, which all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. Where are the nicest trees? They're in the neighborhoods that are whiter, wealthier, better educated. Generally, that's what you're going to find. And we certainly know race, education, income are big drivers of public health. Now, I tried to control for those things, as I showed you what we were showing with my little cartoons there. But my cartoons showed it being a little bit simpler and more clear-cut than it is in reality. The truth is, you can never be absolutely sure that if you account for everything, you might miss something. And this sort of stuff, if you've got any sense, it makes you a little anxious. I missed something, this isn't real. So I was in this horrible meeting 3 or 4 years ago. Well, I mean, some meeting, it was horrible, but it was sociologists in it. I tell you, never ever get in a room with sociologists. They speak in paragraphs. Oh. Oh. I hate numbers. There's always like, there's nothing that you can't talk to. Anyway, so I was in physical discomfort. I was desperately trying to just ignore these people talking about conceptual frameworks and things like this. And I realized, well, you can flip this question on its head. If trees are good for us, then killing them should be bad for us, right? That's one should follow from the other. That was my great revelation. Really not much of a revelation, you might think, and probably right. But what it does is, that, with that in mind, let's imagine a different type of tree experiment, because now we can maybe do experiments again. So let's look. So instead of recruiting sick people and planting trees, it takes forever. Let's recruit healthy people with mature trees, and then let's cut them down, in half of them, and see what happens for those people. Now, this idea is theoretically flawless, but completely impractical, because you would get assaulted if you did this. So it's the type of idea that scientists are very good at coming up with. It's completely impractical, but theoretically flawless ideas. So this, you might think this is ridiculous. I'd probably get shot if I tried to do this study. So does this mean that there's no merit to this? Well, maybe not. What happens if the trees die for other reasons? It wasn't me going around and cutting them down. What happens if trees die for other reasons? Could we see what happens then? But we need something that could kill a lot of trees in a short amount of time. You only see a lot of dead trees to see what would happen. Well, what could do that? What could kill a lot of trees in a short amount of time?
Fire.
Fire would do it, then, but not so much in an urban area. Pests, or somebody said pests. Well, it's not been California, but the nastiest in the last 10 to 15 years?
EAB.
Precisely. So EAB, terrible. Emerald ash borer.
Sorry.
That's quite right. So the emerald ash borer, which you haven't had the joy of yet, but you will get. I mean, it's coming, and it's not going to be good. Actually, I've got some pictures. You want to see what happens? That's Toledo in 2006, same street 2009. So that's what it does. Kills basically 100% of untreated trees. So ferocious, terrible, except for me, it's fantastic. So it offers an opportunity, because what happens if you do kill all these trees in a short amount of time? So now we have that sort of experiment where we do something like this, where we have these people with healthy trees. Some live in areas that have EAB and some don't. So, the boat comes along, and then the question is, do people do worse when that happens, right? Again, terrible, terrible, terrible people, all of you. It's dead people, for goodness sake. Anyway, so this is sort of my hypothesis. And the good thing about EAB is it doesn't care about demographics, right? It'll kill trees in both the areas. It'll kill trees in poor areas. Does it care about the racial makeup of the neighborhoods? Not in the slightest. It will kill everything. It's not like some bugs that might, the trees might have to be stressed. It kills the lot. So it's fantastic. So rather than looking at the presence of trees, and the presence of trees might be correlated with things like race, education, income, the death of trees is not, because they all are going. So this is fantastic for all of that particular species. So, in fact, if you look at this, this shows you the spread of 2002 just to 2013. And you see this wave-like spread, obviously. But you see the satellite populations popping up. I'll go through a couple of times. That's often accidental transport, firewood, or I have a friend who's an urban forester in Ohio, and he said that sometimes in counties, the first place that show up will be roadside rest areas, just because, the bug, even if you can just jump on cars and hop off. Basically, look, there's Boulder County in Colorado in 2013, hundreds of miles from the nearest case in eastern Kansas there, I guess. So, clearly, can you imagine a demographic factor like race, education, income changing as fast or in a pattern like that? They don't change that way. So the bug, the speed and the spread makes it a really interesting thing to study. So what do we do? So what we did is we looked at I wanted to look at two causes of death that could be plausibly linked with the loss of trees. So now we're looking at death, the life and death part, we looked at the birth outcomes. So I looked at cardiovascular disease and lower respiratory. I always get that, there's 21 years in this country, most words I get right, is it respiratory or respiratory? Well, I'm going to say it wrong. So it's just imagine being said right in your head, and that's it, that's what I'll say, right. I don't know why, for some reason, I can't get that one word right. So what could link cardiovascular lower respiratory disease with loss of trees? Well, air quality. We certainly know that air quality can be affected by loss, can affect tree loss can affect air quality, tree loss can affect stress, and both of those are big drivers of cardiovascular disease and lower respiratory disease. And in this case, I looked at mortality, not just the incidence of the disease, but mortality. For again, pragmatic reasons, you can get great data on death. Over 99% of deaths are reported in this country, and then they're coded. So when somebody dies, the doctor will say, well, why did they die? So there's great data there. So what I did was, this is the little squares here are counties. So I was looking at county level mortality from 1990 through 2007. And that was, at the time, 2007 was the most recent data I could get hold of. And we control for a wide range of county level demographics. So again, race, education, income, all that type of stuff at the county level. And what we found is that counties infested with EAB had higher rates of cardiovascular and lower respiratory disease. And so this was interesting. And also the impact got bigger the longer infestation progressed. Why would that be? It takes a while to kill the trees, so more trees are dying. So you're seeing a kind of dose-response relationship. More trees are dying, more people are dying. So that's interesting. I also found a bigger impact in wealthier counties. Why would that be? Because those wealthier counties are going to have more better maintained trees. If they're good for you, killing them is going to have a bigger impact. Again, but what does that also tell you? It tells you that the wealthier counties had more trees, were getting better health benefits until the bug came along. The poorer counties were not. Again, there's that slightly sick feeling in the stomach where you get uncomfortable when you start thinking about this stuff. There's some real environmental justice issues here. Again, life and death stuff. Here we're picking up differences in mortality. And what I found is across 6 years in 15 states, additional 15,000 people died from cardiovascular disease and 6,000 from low respiratory, so 21,000 deaths. Not a really trivial number. Yeah.
So additional to the number who typically would have died in that period of time before the trees died.
Precisely. Yeah. After having taken out all the other effects. That's precisely. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. Now, we don't know how sick people were before they died. I'm not saying that a perfectly healthy 20-year-old dies because a leaf falls off a tree. That's not what I'm saying. Loss of trees is just a risk factor, same way as, say, genetics or smoking or any number of things. Those are the people who are going to die. So to illustrate this point, we have two little people here. We've got this very fit young lady on the right, and then the guy on the left who appears to be making it his life's work to collect as many risk factors as he possibly can. And they both have trees. And then maybe they both lose the trees. So that makes the air quality worse for both of them. Makes their stress goes up. But he's the only one who dies. Right? He's got the other risk factors. Notice he kept the bottle upright just in case the EMTs managed to revive him. Yeah, doesn't want to have to buy. Hey, that could be like 2/3 full. Waste it. Yeah, so that would be it. So we're saying the loss of trees is not that perfectly healthy people are dying. This is just a risk factor like anything else. Now, you get results like this. I remember the day I was in my office and I ran these models. I was getting these results, and I was thinking, oh, wow, okay. Now, if you've got any sense, or you've got a delicate ego, and then you're definitely more in that category, when you get results like this, you don't tell anybody. You don't even tell other people in the study. What you do is you sit in your office by yourself and try and disprove them. Better to disprove your own results, then nobody ever knows anything about it. Then you publish them several years ago, later somebody else disproved it and makes you look like an idiot. And so, one of the things important in science is negative results. So I found a relationship between tree loss and two causes of death that could be plausibly linked with. But what about a cause of death that could not plausibly link with tree loss? So I looked at accidental death. Beetles are not going to cause carrot ticks. This is not. There's no possible relationship there. And I found no relationship. Now that's encouraging. It's not definitive like a control in an experiment, but it is encouraging that I found a relationship where there could be one and there didn't where there couldn't be one. Now, this study had its limitations. It's what's called an ecological study. That was, I wasn't looking at individual level health data, I was looking at county level, aggregate. And there's a limitation because just because results apply at the county doesn't mean they apply to the individuals within that county. It's what we call the ecological fallacy in science. So, the reason I use county level data is totally pragmatic. To be honest, I thought it was a bit of a long shot study. I'm not sure it's going to work out. It's a lot easier to get hold of county level data. So, of course, you might say I've been lazy. I'm an economist, I'd say I've been efficient. Self-serving explanations are another one of my character weaknesses, but never mind. But having found levels so I got these results at the county level. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to go the additional step and let's look at how does tree loss affect individual health. Let's try and get access to individual health records. So what I did was I got access to this thing called the Women's Health Initiative, which is a big study. Some of you may have heard of it. It started in the mid-90s, and they recruited 161,000 postmenopausal women. So they were 50 to 79 at recruitment. And they followed their health from the mid-90s onwards. And this is what we call, in public health, a cohort study. You have people who are similar in some way, and then you recruit them, and then you just follow them and see what happens to them. So these are results are only a few months old. They should hopefully be published by the end of the year. And so what I found is, and this is an individual woman, I found an individual woman's risk of having a stroke, a heart attack, or dying from cardiovascular disease is 25% higher in counties infested with EAP. You're seeing it's a significant risk factor for dying. So you're seeing consistent results. So at county level, you're seeing an impact. We're seeing this at individuals as well. And this is not trivial numbers. This is a significant risk factor for death. Not for being unhappy, not for making your street less pretty, but for people dying. So yeah, literally life and death. That's what we're talking about here. And I should say we control these stuff, age, race, education, income, smoking status, body mass index, exercise, emotional well-being, diabetes, a whole host of stuff. So it wasn't because of other differences like that. Now, one observational study isn't definitive, even two, they're not definitive, but this is a steady drip of evidence that trees may provide this great public health benefit. So in the remaining few minutes, I'm going to switch gears completely and talk about something that you guys probably don't see a lot of in the San Joaquin Valley, and that is, this is what we call moss, which you probably never see. In the Pacific Northwest, we see too much of it. So why on earth should I be talking about moss? Something that you don't see and I see too much of. Well, what I've been doing recently is using moss to map air quality. Because moss are interesting. They don't have roots. They get all their moisture, they get everything from the air, so they're these little sponges that soak up air pollution. And so that you can, brutally pull them off the tree, grind them up and test them for different air pollutions. They're these little mini air quality stations. And they're much cheaper. It's much cheaper to pull moss off a tree and send it to the lab than to put up an air quality monitoring station. When I got into looking at air quality, it's really actually horrifying how little we know about air quality. So there is in Portland a city of 600,000 people, it's 233 square kilometers. I think that's what it is. Anyway, it's a big city. We have one permanent air quality monitor. That's it. And a lot of air polluters don't go very far. They don't go more than a few meters. They don't really tell us anything. The truth is, we don't really know very much about air quality at all. So it's all fine to have, air quality laws and things, but if we don't know anything about the air we're breathing, it's kind of pointless. I mean, to me, some of the environmental regulations are this sort of communal fantasy because we don't understand air quality. So a lovely low-cost MOS is going to hopefully solve the problems here. We focus on a group of pollutants called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And I cannot say that after having eaten one beer. So I'm going to say, well, that's the only time I'm saying it. Now I'm going to call them PAHs. Okay. And what are they? Well, they're a classic compounds. They come from burning stuff. Mainly fossil fuels, but also it's things like tobacco. And they're carcinogens, cause cancer, very nasty stuff. The EPA has a group of 16 that they know or suspect cause cancer. Some of them are virulently carcinogenic. There's one called benzoylpyrene, which was the first chemically identified carcinogen. It's one of the major carcinogens in cigarette smoke. This is stuff you do not want to be breathing, if at all possible. And so, because we've known that if you expose people, even before we knew a few hundred years ago, we still know if you expose people to the products of combustion, this ain't good. In 1775, there's a doctor in London found that chimney sweeps had elevated levels of all god-awful things, scrotal cancer. Jesus, didn't even know that was a thing you could get. But these chimney sweeps were getting it, and because of the soot. And in the 19th century, you also found that coal tar workers had more lung cancer from being around coal tar. So we've known for a long time that this is not good stuff to breathe. So what I did is, from December the 2nd to the 23rd in 2013, my colleague Sarah Jovan and I collected moss samples. So this show you can, the sun can shine in December. Me collecting from a kind of area on the edge of the city, collecting moss. And this is kind of in the more towards the centre of town. They dropped one morning to 12 degrees, and I can tell you those blue nitrile gloves, they're not very warm. I got home one night and I couldn't feel my hand. I was numb to the elbow. It was horrible. That's what I do for science. I wasn't meant to laugh, that's really sympathetic. Heartless bunch. Anyway, so we took these samples, we cleaned them up, sent them to the lab, and we tested them for these PAHs. And then what we did is we developed statistical models of why this pH is higher in one spot than the other. Okay? And this is what we found. I'm just going to show you for results from two, just to keep it simple. So this one, also before I should say, this gives you an idea of what Portland looks like. So there's the Columbia River on the north, so that's Washington, north there where everything's legal. And then you've got the Lanham River, runs north-south. And the dark green is trees, so we've got Forest Park, we have a 5,000 acre forest park in the northwest of the city, and then the light green are grass and shrubs, and then the road, dark red roads. So I may switch back so I can give you an idea of the results. So we look at pyrene. So we have here pyrene, the green is the highest and the pink is the lowest. So what you see is really, you can see the green clustered around the roads, right? Not surprising. Okay. That's no great surprise, so that we know where it's coming from. But where are the lowest areas? You see the pink there in the top left. You see that's where the trees are, right? Also, if Pixelmeter has never been to Portland, if you could come up on the screen here and point to where the wealthy people in Portland live, I bet you'd get it right. Yeah, it wouldn't be where the poor air quality is. It wouldn't be next to the freeway, would it? Again, we start to get that environmental, that slight oh God, that slight sick feeling. It's coming back now. So this is interesting. So okay, this all very well as maps. So what we did is now what I'm going to show you is the effect of what happens. Should have. So pyrene at its median level is 112 micrograms per kilogram. Now, that number is completely meaningless, so don't worry about it. It just means we've got a starting point. Now let's see what happens if we increase road density. Now we abused things really horribly in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens if you change roads, trees, and some other things. We change them by 1 standard deviation. For those of you who are not familiar with that, all that really means is I'm going to show you equivalent changes. What happens when I show you an equivalent change, that's all. It's just a way of sort of standardizing a change. So if you live somewhere and we increase the road density by 1 standard deviation, then the pyrogen levels go by 9%. Okay, no big surprise. We know it comes from burning gasoline, so no Nobel Prize for me. Right. So let's go back. What happens if we increase tree density? Well, then we'll see, in fact, that the pyrogen goes down by 17%. So in fact, having trees around your house is more important than the roads. In fact, it shows that maybe trees can be used to cancel out some of the impacts of the roads. Because which is easier, moving a freeway or planting a tree? You know, this is one of the things we talked about at dinner last night. A lot of the environmental stuff, okay, we show moving a freeway is bad. In a way, who cares? What are you going to do about that? Stop the freeway, move the people, it's not going to happen. But trees you can do, this is something you can actually do. And that's, I think, really important for people to understand. You can plant trees, it's not difficult, and you can plant and maintain them at reasonable cost. And you can actually do something about important things, like exposing people to things that give them cancer, for example, which I would regard as a fairly important thing. So we go back, and then we also find, what happens if we increase grass and shrubs, and then it goes down by 11%. And so, as you'd imagine, this would be grass and shrubs just have less leaf area, so you would expect that. And I should say, this was in December, so this is probably a lower bound than the true effect. My guess is that, in fact, the trees have a bigger effect than this, because even somewhere like Portland, the majority of street trees, for example, are deciduous. So I just can look at now to show you quickly benzopyrene. This is a really toxic one, similar pattern. It's stuck really along, much tighter along the freeways, but still, again, you see the lowest levels where there's much trees. The roads go up by 1 standard deviation, it goes up by 13%, and then trees make those down by 12%. So a similar pattern, not quite as mad. So that's a pretty big effect. How much time have I got left here? I'm just going to show you one thing that you may find interesting. This idea that I was saying that we don't really know much about air quality. But this is not strictly to do with trees, but you may find it interesting. So the other thing we tested was heavy metals in our moss samples. Heavy metals are not good, right? If any of you familiar with cadmium. Cadmium is nasty stuff. So the big four from a public health point of view are lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium. Nasty, nasty stuff. And we have these, benchmark levels, not meant to have it. It's associated with lung cancer, prostate cancer, kidney disease, bad stuff. So what we did was, so here's a map, just a crude map of cadmium in Portland, where white is the highest and green is the lowest. Now, this is very different because it comes from industrial point sources. So you see these kind of bullseyes, where it comes from. Now the interesting thing is that the yellow stars there are the 10 biggest permitted emitters. So these are industrial sources that have permits to emit cadmium. There don't really seem to be much of a pattern between the stuff that has a permit and where the highest levels are, does there? In fact, this is for the Oregon DEQ. This is one of the top 5 priorities in states to find out where this cadmium is coming from. But they don't know, because they've got one air quality monitor, which is about there. And in fact, when they did some models, and they said, well, they estimated what it should be there, based on emitted values, and then they measured it, and it was 8 times higher than it should be. And 5 times higher than the state benchmark. And it's like, oops. Right? They didn't know where it's coming from. So one of the things they said is, so we created these maps, and they said, can you test things? And they said, well, we've got a vague suspicion that stained glass manufacturing might be responsible, of all things. Because cadmium is a pigment, gets used in glass and plastics. So here is, let's look at, oops, there's a glass manufacturing plant there. Oh, look, there's one there. Oh, look, there's one there. So it's kind of interesting. It's just a way of finding out. So we do some other work. It's just, I don't know, to me, kind of horrifying how little we know about the air we breathe. But we can leave that alone. So that's really all I've got for you. What I have convinced you is that trees can be a matter of life and death. And that in many ways, what you could, I think everybody in this room could consider themselves working in public health. And that's what you're doing. You're doing things which are improving people's health, which are a matter of life and death. So when the arguments are made about financial resources and water resources, hopefully I've given you some information that you can use to say, well, no, my job isn't simply to make the town look a little pretty. Yeah, that's it. I'm done.
Thank you.
I've got a little time for questions, and then I will get out of your head. Go ahead.
So, thank you. This is really important. And for me, I've been in the urban forestry industry for a long time, and I struggle more now than ever before. I'm kind of mad, you know, because we work hard to help make this change and get this message out. And my latest issue that I'm struggling with is who ultimately is responsible to help make this change and get this message out so communities respond. And I know that that is not your responsibility, but what we see is cities aren't really responsible for that. That's the federal government or the state, possibly. So, and yet, it's these communities where these things are happening that we need to see the change be made.
Yes.
And I don't know, I think I'm just feeling a level of frustration and really wanting to get to the EPA or whoever it is that will deal with it.
No, I understand. And I'll give you one nugget here is that I've also done some work with other benefits. And one of the first studies I did, I looked at the impact of trees on house price, right? Good, because I'm an economist, I care about that. And I found that trees significantly impacted house price. So if you impact house price, what you also impact? Property tax revenues, right? They go up, property tax revenues go up. What I found in Portland is for every dollar that the city spends on trees, on urban trees, on planting and maintenance, they get 3 times that back just in terms of increased property tax revenues. So guess what? All this health stuff you get for free. Oh, and some extra money on top of that, in case free is not good enough for you. And then I've also done work with crime and energy and stuff. So even if you're a heartless politician, well, that's a bit redundant, and you don't care about health, you're getting increases in property tax. The money you're spending is more than coming back. And I'm not meaning in a general sense, in an amorphous sense. I mean dollars in your tax base. So this is all for nothing. Go ahead.
Is there any information available currently regarding the whole concept of the Freeway health interface that we can use to counteract some of the things that are going on with the freeway system through the Central Valley? Because I know with the drought, there's been a lot of talk about pulling back the vegetative plantings along freeways and going to hardscaping as a cost savings and water saving measure. And from what I've heard anecdotally, but haven't been able to really pull the information together, having that corridor with the trees on either side is going to cut down a lot of, or possibly help cut down some of the impacts of the air pollution from the vehicles going through. So if we're putting pressure on our representatives to do things that benefit the air quality in the valley, one of the things I think they should be doing is exactly the opposite of what's being proposed with the drought, and instead of hardscaping, greenscape the whole thing.
I could not agree more. And the Oregon Department of Transportation is involved in, if you go back here a little bit, somewhere there's it. You see that this is I-205, this is a freeway, and they're doing a tree planting along here, so precisely for that reason. And one of the things I can do with this work is I can model it and say, here's what the air quality is now. Now let's see, we can say, well, we have a pretty good idea what the trees are going to look like in, say, 30 years. And I can say, well, then this is what the reduction in air quality would be, I mean, the improvement in air quality from there. Because a lot of these pollutants don't actually go very far. the nasty ones, hundreds of meters sometimes, or a mile or two at most. So if you can knock them down right there, it's enormously important. So yeah, I'll give you a business card. They're doing this in Oregon. I know it's different because they've got the water issues, but through this type of work, I could give you numbers about, well, if the trees went up this amount, then I can estimate that you would reduce the pH as this amount, you would reduce the heavy metals this amount. And so that I could actually try and give you some...
Up to recently, the focus was removing the non-native species like eucalyptus and some of the other things, and then switching over to oak and some other plantings that are supposedly more acclimated to the climate. But with this current water crunch, what I'm hearing over and over again with some of the large development projects in the freeway interchanges is hardscape. And that is exactly what this model is suggesting that's not the way to go.
No, and particularly when you've got anywhere near people, then it will be a tragic mistake. And so I will give you a business card and I can maybe help you out with some of those. If you have a particular freeways, heavy roads that are running near where people live, and you are talking about removing vegetation, then you are making life and death mistakes.
And that's the Central Valley. I-5 on one side, 99 in the middle, and it's...
Well, in California, you lead the way in other clean air issues, the changes in how you had the recent things with diesel, and how they've done. So it would seem that if we do that, there will be an inconsistency between the desire to do that and then to remove vegetation that could stop people's exposure to that air pollution. Right? They don't seem consistent in my mind, but that's just me. But yes, I would be happy to help you the best I can with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just curious about, you're saying that the trees reduce the pollutants.
Yes.
And conversely, trees produce more oxygen.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you made that in the...
Oh, the impact of that. We haven't looked at that specifically, no. We've mainly been looking at intercepting either just like by sticking to the leaves, or sometimes some of them, when the gases just get uptaken into the stomata, the actual leaves. So mainly we have been looking at interception rather, but you're right, it's oxygen production as well.
Life's in the blood, the more oxygen, we're going to fight disease much better.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and where does that, the oxygen, of course, comes from taking up the carbon dioxide to reduce the oxygen as well.
Well, I was wondering if you got...
We haven't looked at that particular, but that's an interesting point. There's a lot, tip of the iceberg for this stuff, but thanks for the question. And anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
The studies that you did showing canopy and maturity, and then the other studies that you showed that range from areas of 50 meters out to 500 meters. Your study focused on 50 meters, whereas some of the other ones studied 500 meters. In your study, that would kind of negate the maturity right here, because in your 50 meters, there were spots that were open and spots that were heavily mature. So my question is, are those mature coverage? We have housing divisions around here that are 15 years old, where the trees are just starting to be of a size, but in the last 10, 15 years, they were heavily planted with trees. So, and some of them are more along the lines of the higher socioeconomic. But we have areas of town where the lower socioeconomic have lots of mature street trees. So how does your study equate to someplace like Modesto, that the richer area, let's call it, has very young trees, and the lower socioeconomic has mature, well-canopied areas?
Well, if I would, the relationship, that sort of nice neighborhood effect is not universal, right? You do get the sort of, the McMansions are going to be wealthy with the little trees. So we're still picking that effect. But the other thing I think which you're picking up is just any measure which you're just looking at canopy from above, you're not, are 5 little trees that take up 500 square feet the same as one big tree that takes up 500 square feet? Absolutely not. And so one of the things now we're trying to do is to take into, familiar with LiDAR, where you can start to get 3-dimensional images of trees. So that's what we're going to try and do now, is to say, well, it may be, the actual size of the kind of density, the 3-dimensional size may be more important than just, looking at it as a piece of broccoli from above. So we're trying to get better and better images. And part of the things, there's a technical issue, some of those other studies, they were using satellite imagery which had a much coarser resolution, 30-meter resolution, whereas what I had was 1-meter resolution. So there may be some technical reasons why they were finding their results, just because they had poorer resolution data. But I hope that at least part answers your question. Anything else? Great. Thank you for your time.